Hello everyone, this is Colin once again. We're continuing the Robert Spencer book review, The Politically Incorrect Guide to Islam, and going into Chapter 8, which is entitled The Lure of Islamic Paradise. Now I want to start this review by mentioning I don't understand what Spencer's huge problem is. Essentially, he seems to have a problem with the Muslim description of heaven. I don't understand why he has an issue with it. Maybe it's because he's envious, because in the Bible there really is no clear description of what heaven is going to be like, yet the Quran does give a pretty great description of what the hereafter will be, or what will be entitled. He essentially says that Muhammad explained heaven to his followers because they were 7th century Arabian desert dwellers, I'm quoting him by the way, who could possibly dream of gold and fine material things, fruits, wine, water, women, and boys. End quote. He goes on to quote the Quran with various passages to describe the food that will be there, the clothing that they will wear in heaven, the environment, the gardens flowing with water, the companions that will be there, on and on and on. And then he says wine, but aren't alcoholic drinks forbidden to Muslims? Doesn't that Quran say that strong drink is Satan's handiwork, chapter 5 verse 90? How then can Satan's handiwork be found in paradise? Well, the wine paradise is different, you see. It's free from headiness, so that those who drink it will not suffer intoxication therefrom. That's Quran 37:47. And then on and on and on and on and on. Now, again, I'll pause right there. I don't understand what he's getting at. He describes the Islamic heaven, yet he makes a snide remark about wine. I still don't understand what his problem is. But moving on. Then he has a little title, The Joy of Sex. And he mentions that there will be lovely companions there who will be there to as companions for the people in heaven. Again, I don't understand what his problem is with that. But then he does throw a little quaint wrench here in the argument. He says, but paradise will not be a bore for Muslims with different, basically different persuasions. Allah promises blessed that in paradise round about them will serve devoted to them young male servants, handsome as pearls, well guarded. 52:24. Use of perpetual freshness. 56:17. If thou seest them, thou wouldst think them scattered pearls. 76:19. And then he asks the question, but surely the Quran isn't condoning homosexuality, is it? And then he talks about Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah and blah 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 blah. And then he mentions some hadiths about condemning homosexuality in Islam, or at least the practice of sodomy in particular. And he asks this rhetorical question like, well, wait a minute, what's up with this? There'll be boy servants who will be serving the people in paradise. Is this basically alluding to homosexuality? No, it's not. And why is that? Because nowhere in the Quran are these verses at all sexual with the servants who happen to be angelic males. This is never a question of sexual context at all. He again is just hinting to things by trying to quote these verses out of context and then trying to add his own spin to it. He then quotes the poet Abu Nuwas, who glorified homosexuality in his poetry. Okay, so what? So an Arab poet glorified homosexuality in his poems. Fair enough. What does that have to do with Islam? That's like basically me saying that a Catholic priest, Robert Spencer is Catholic, a Catholic priest does sexual things to a young child, a young boy in particular. Does that mean that all of Catholicism is okay with pedophilia and homosexuality? No, I would say not, yet that is what Robert Spencer is doing here. He calls this a paradoxical attitude towards homosexuality. Yeah, okay, fair enough. He mentions the Ottoman Sultan Muhammad II liked young boy slaves. Okay, but can we find places where homosexuality has run rampant in Catholicism and Christianity? Certainly we can. We could find that throughout history. It's found throughout all of humanity, not just Islam or Christianity for that matter. He then says, how does one gain entry to paradise? And all he quotes is the Quran saying, for theirs is return in the garden of paradise, a promise binding on him in truth. He's referring to people who are slain, martyrs. He then does say, he quotes the hadith, know that paradise is under the shades of swords, etc. The problem is that he's only quoting 2 verses. This is the problem here. He quotes just 2 places, one from the Quran, one from the Hadiths, and is not quoting anything else. There are tons of other places where it talks about people going to paradise. Jihad is not the only way to gain entry into paradise, first off. There are hadiths where Muhammad says that if you practice the pillars of Islam faithfully, you will go to paradise. There are places that say if you go on the Hajj, your sins are forgiven. There are places that say if you are just a martyr because you die from a disease or a plague, you will go to paradise. All of these things. A God in Islam can grant anyone paradise whom he wills. It is just that martyrs are special individuals, and I believe that martyrdom is actually a case in Christianity as well. I know for a fact that Crusaders were promised paradise if they went on the crusade. If they were martyred in the way of Christianity, they would go to paradise. So martyrdom is a universal concept in many religions, not just in Islam, but certainly it is not the only way that someone can go to paradise. Now, he mentions suicide bombers, and the problem is that Mr. Spencer does not tell you the problem with suicide bombers. The thing is that suicide bombers are doing things which are against Islam. It is against Islam to commit sin, or excuse me, to kill yourself. That is a sin. That is a ticket to a hellfire. If you kill innocent people, it is a sin. So Robert Spencer does not tell you any of this. He just says that, look, this is the motivation for suicide bombers. While that might be the case, I want to point out to you that he only quotes, if I'm not mistaken, let me just double check, I believe he only quotes, I think I found this kind of humorous, this might be in the other chapter, the last chapter, but let me see if I can find it. Let's see here. Somewhere else in the book, I know he mentions that he quotes some 14-year-old who says, oh yes, here we go. This is kind of ironic. He says, as lurid as they are, the joys of Islamic paradise have a definite and continuing appeal. An appeal felt most sharply perhaps by teenage boys. In 2004, a 14-year-old would-be Palestinian suicide bomber told the Israeli troops who disarmed him, blowing myself up is the only chance I've got to have sex with 72 virgins in the Garden of Eden. Another 14-year-old explained how a jihadist recruiter enticed him to join the jihad in Iraq. He told me about paradise, about virgins, about Islam. The problem is, I don't actually believe that a devoted Muslim would know this, because the 72 virgins is a high misconception in Islam. Furthermore, let's just pretend for a second the 14-year-old did say this. So are we now, according to Robert Spencer, going to take what Islam teaches based on what 14-year-olds say, based on what children say, based on children who live in a harsh environment, who are being taught by people who are of a certain mindset? We're going to take what Islam means from them? That's basically like going to a Christian 14-year-old and going, what's Christianity about? And only taking what they say from it, and that's what Christianity is. If Robert Spencer is only going to quote from us random poets regarding homosexuality and random 14-year-old would-be terrorists based on, and radicals based on, and he expects those quotations to be his evidence for his view on Islam, I would have to say that he should find better and more scholarly people to quote, because he lacks those sort of quotations in his book. Instead, he quotes people who hate Islam, and he only quotes people like 14-year-old would-be suicide bombers. So frankly, I find that this chapter, again, I realize that this chapter is not as beefy, for lack of a better phrase, as the past chapters, but frankly, we're scratching the bottom of the barrel here. This is the second to last chapter in the book, and frankly, this is Robert Spencer at his worst, attempting to dig what he can out of any place, out of any corner, and take things completely out of context, add his own spin to it, because frankly, if it was the truth that martyrdom and jihad was the only way to paradise, then why is it that he doesn't quote any other verses which he knows do exist in the Hadiths and in the Quran? So thank you very much for watching this video. Peace be with you all.